tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. We have another exciting talk and conversation for you tonight about the criminal justice system. Tonight I have three guests in the studio. I have Dr. Chism. He's the pastor at St. John's United Methodist Church, my church, and leads the path to freedom. We have Miss Betty Waedemon, and she will explain her relationship as a volunteer and prison activist. And we have my regular co-host, Mr. Danny Sneed, who, as you know, is the encourager for the Path to Freedom at St. John's United Methodist Church. And as we know, he's done 15 years in prison, and he always shares his prison experience with the church, with us in the audience. So today, though, I got church on my mind because the theme tonight is the church and the criminal justice system. So I'm thinking about church. I'm thinking about letting the church say amen as we do. Amen all the time. So we're gonna talk about the church and the criminal justice system tonight. So we don't have anyone specifically giving their testimony tonight. Tonight we're gonna learn about what we can do to volunteer to strengthen prison ministry, hopefully to educate people about the criminal justice system, the penal system, and hope that people can come out and become productive citizens, productive tax-paying citizens, and hopefully figure out ways to reduce the recidivism. It's our community. We want our community to be better and stronger, and we all have to volunteer and get involved to do that. And I think that I've helped us get along with that over the last 2 or 3 years with this show by people sharing their stories, sharing their testimonies, having something on YouTube that you can show young people, hopefully to deter them, to let them know that one quick decision could lead to a life imprisonment. So without further ado from me, I will start with one of my pastors at St. John's United Methodist Church, the newly PhD doctor from Rice University, Dr. Chism.
Good evening. I'll begin by discussing what inspires me to do what I do with prison ministry, with the Path to Freedom, the prison ministry that I established and founded about 6 years ago at St. John's Downtown United Methodist Church. In my doctoral studies, I'm a student of the civil rights movement, and I look at the involvement and participation of different churches in the civil rights movement. And Dr. Martin Luther King and several other civil rights leaders were an inspiration to me growing up. Civil rights movement happened over 50 years ago. It's past. What stands before us today, I believe strongly, is the issue of mass incarceration. And so, question that bugs me is, what is the church going to do? What can the church do to address this issue today? The U.S. has the largest prison population in the United States, 2.2 million people in jails, prisons. Many of these persons are members of our churches, members of our community. Also, 1 in 3 blacks in jails, prisons. There is disparities within the criminal justice system. And so this is a major concern that churches need to be actively and heavily invested in. So what I decided to do was to organize a group of members that carry this concern and this passion to make change in the criminal justice system. We do work inside prisons. We visited several local jails as well as prisons. We minister and serve men and women that are coming out of prison are in desperate need of hope and love and care. Many of the persons that come to St. John's downtown on a weekly basis that I serve are homeless, sleeping on the street, looking for their next meal, in desperate need. And so we try to meet those needs and minister to them where they're at. And also, we aspire to work with at-risk youth and provide services for the families of persons that are incarcerated. We participate in Angel Tree. We have back-to-school drives for children that have a parent in prison. And a last major issue is public policy. Part of what this show is about, truth and justice, the legal system, the laws that are barriers for persons re-entering society and making a smooth transition. So we are invested in trying to change some of those laws. And so it's a lot of work to be done to tackle this issue of mass incarceration. And I'm excited to be a part of the movement. And that's what I see is it's not just a ministry, but it's also a movement. And I'm excited, along with some of the other guests at the table, to be a participant. This is our time as a people, as a church, as a community, to make a difference.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. What can the church do about mass incarceration? Dr. Chism, I've never heard of it like that. I mean, I never even thought about it. I know that you do great work. Danny does great work, and people like you, like Miss Betty, do great work. But I never thought about it on a global church responsibility issue. I've often been concerned about the civil rights movement, as Dr. Chisholm talked about, because so many of the civil rights leaders were ministers. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like you know, as a black person who felt aggrieved in the 40s and 50s, you could go to your pastor. You could go to your church. When Rosa Parks wouldn't get up, I mean, you know, when she was arrested, it was the church that came to her behalf. But now all of the mega churches are 501(c)(3)s and seem to think that they can't get involved in that and they can't be political, which is not true. But they believe that it's a comfortable zone to be in about making money and creating businesses. And although that has an important place, one should still be able to go to their church when they're aggrieved or when they're wronged, or even when they're wrong as a person, but they want to rehabilitate themselves. Because as we know, the prison is not a rehabilitative system. And so can the church play a role in that? I think so. I mean, I joined the American Leadership Forum Criminal Justice Division to try to get with other criminal justice leaders to beg them to use, and they were judges and very influential people, use your resources to go to ExxonMobil and Shell and all these plants and see if maybe probationers, first-time offenders could do, instead of doing community service, work for $4 an hour to learn a skill at a plant. You know, use your influence. I mean, the criminal justice system as we see it was designed for a different criminal and for a different time. That's why it's mass now. Because when I'm 55, and when I was young, and I'm from San Antonio though, and people, my viewers have heard me say this, they only went after the bad people. You know, in the 70s, marijuana was a felony. But if somebody had a joint in their car when we were in high school, 16, 17, the police officers, in San Antonio, it's over 5% black, so it wasn't a racial thing. We didn't have any black cops. I mean, but if they caught somebody with marijuana, they threw it away. I mean, they knew when kids were going to school and trying to do right. We might have had beers in the car, you know, partying. There was a lot of kickers in San Antonio. They threw the beer away. Go home. You know, the only people they were going to arrest teenagers were people who shot people, who sold heroin at that time, and actually did dastardly crimes. You know, but that's the only people they arrested. I mean, you rarely knew somebody being arrested, even though you lived in a lower income community, segregated community. I didn't know if people were going to jail. I knew who was bad in the neighborhood. I know the men that beat their wives. I knew the kids who lived in abused situations, but their daddies wasn't going to jail. You know, the community dealt with it.
Right.
Families dealt with it. You know, if somebody was getting beat down the street, you know, everybody in the neighborhood went down there, or they called their aunties and cousins, and everybody came over there to run him off. You know, the daddy who lived there till he got sober. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but you just didn't send everybody to prison. People
Everyone
tried.
you're mad at.
Everybody you're mad at.
Yeah.
We try to create solutions so that we could
Absolutely.
work together in the community, as a family, as a block, as a church. You might have had some sisters come pray over that bad wayward husband that was cheating and drinking and beating. You know, people tried to lay hands on him as a community, but it wasn't like everybody goes to jail. Everybody goes to jail. You know, 4 kids in a car, 1 joint, everybody goes to jail. You know, ruin everybody's careers. And back then, we didn't even have computers to even check people's records. But now it's like, because of that, they make it worse. I did negotiate with DAs every day, and it's like, I don't care as long as we get a conviction. As long as we get a conviction. As long as we get a conviction. I don't care if he did it or not. As long as we get a conviction. Really? Really?
Scalp on a belt.
I was a prosecutor. The prosecutor's oath, which is in the penal code, is not to convict, but to see that justice is done. That's the oath that we take.
Okay.
Not to convict, but to see that justice is done. You'd never think that. That's
It's more like
the
scalps
prosecutors
on the
take an
belt.
oath.
Right.
Like our Harris County prosecutor, Devin Anderson, if she's elected by the people, she was appointed, but say her husband who was elected by the people,
Right.
everybody, all 250 assistant DAs in Harris County, he appoints. And on January 1st, when he takes his oath, then everybody takes that oath that's in the penal code, okay? You wouldn't think that, would you? Especially being a defense lawyer when we're hearing people say, we don't care if he did it or not. So anyway, let me get off my high horse soapbox, and thank you for saying that, and thank you for begging that question, what can the church do? I really want to hear that more at church.
Yeah.
The mega churches, I mean, the big churches, the preachers have so much influence.
Right. Right.
They could help with the rehabilitative side of things, the second chance program. Because once people go down the road 2 or 3 times, it's hard to get a job. But that first time, you can catch them. I think we could save about 50% that first time if you gave them an option. Because remember, we don't have high schools like in the 70s where you had wood shop and skills and things where people could go ahead and get a job. You know, everybody has to go to college now and get some type of education. And most people, we have such a poor society, those people can't go to college. I could barely go to college. It was tough, but I went in the days of grants in the 70s. But anyway, Miss Betty, would you please introduce yourself and explain what your role is in your prison ministry?
I'm Betty Waedemon. I'm from Sugar Land, and we have a different role in our church in Sugar Land in restorative justice. Restorative justice, by the way, incorporates everything. It incorporates working with the offenders who are locked up. It also means working with their families and also working with the correctional officers and the wardens. It's not just about the offenders. It's the whole system. It's not just the one thing. And in our church, in Sugar Land, our neighbors are the prisons. There are many, many prisons right around the immediate Sugar Land area. So rather than working with reentry as much, we work more on going into the prisons and ministering to the men who are in prison. Most of the men that I meet, I primarily go to the Carol Vance prison. Most of them don't think they should be loved, that they've committed crimes and they're worthless, and we might as well stuff them in a trash can and throw them away, because that's what society has told them. We go into the prisons and we tell them that we love them and Jesus loves them and that they are lovable and that they're worthwhile. And because of this, they have a purpose when they get out, and they have a purpose while they're there. And we have many wonderful programs. And at the Carol Vance prison, we're very fortunate because it's a Christian-based prison. And there's about 300 prisoners, and probably there are at least that many volunteers that go in and work with them on a regular basis. Everything from tutoring. There's people in prison who can't read and write. They need to be taught to read and write. There's guys in prison that are taking college classes and everything in between. So we need tutors for that. We need mentors. If every incarcerated person had a mentor while they're in prison, they would not offend when they get out again. They would know there's a different way. Many of the men in prison have never had a man in their life that was a Christian role model for them. And since they've never had a role model, how are they supposed to know how to act and how to treat a wife or how to treat their family or their children? So the mentors at the Carol Vance prison teach them how to be godly men. And it's not a very difficult problem for a Christian man to go in and do this and just become friends with them. We have programs like the Alpha program, the Disciple program. Every night the men are in a different Christian program. And the Alpha program I participate in, and the men can have 2 family members join them for the program. And it's the only place we can find in the world where this happens, that they actually have 2 family members participate in a program every Thursday evening. And I know lots of moms and lots of wives and get to know them personally and stay close even after the men leave the prison. It's a privilege for me to go in, and I'm not a biblical scholar like Dr. Chism here. I'm just a mom, and I go in there as a mom and love them like a mom. And I get text messages, "Dear Mom, I just had a baby," and they send me their pictures. And that's my reward, is to know these men personally, to come to love them, and to be their prison mom. And it's a responsibility I take seriously. And our church, back to our church, prison ministry has actually energized our church. We
And what's
must
the name of
have
your church?
Christ United Methodist Church. It's in Sugar Land. And we have probably 40 to 50 volunteers at least that go into prisons and that
Wow.
participate.
That's great.
We have
That's
children
awesome.
making cards for the men that are incarcerated for Kairos. We have ladies that make cookies for Kairos.
Now, what's Kairos? I'm sorry.
Kairos is a Christian-based program that's one weekend, and if you're familiar with the Walk to Emmaus, it's from the Emmaus community where you're enveloped in Christian love, so much Christian love, agape love, that you are just overwhelmed by it. And this is the prison version of it. So godly men go in, and from Friday to Sunday, these men are just surrounded by Christian love. They receive letters from people they have never met, never will meet, telling them how much they love them. They receive cards from children that tell them, "My name is Amy, I'm 9 years old, Jesus loves you and so do I." And that makes a huge difference in a person's life. They receive a birthday cake for the first time perhaps. Maybe all of them get a birthday cake. Maybe they've never
Wow.
received one ever, and that's a secret I shouldn't let out. But it's just too cool to keep a
It
secret.
was too good to tell.
It's
Yeah, you
just
had
too
to
good
tell it.
not
You
to
had
tell.
it. Yeah.
And food is made by women on the outside, and it's the only time food can come into the prison that's homemade.
Right.
And they feed them homemade food the whole entire weekend. And the cookies, women bake cookies. Each prisoner receives probably 2 or 3 dozen homemade cookies.
Wow.
They eat cookies till they're sick, and they love the cookies. And all those gestures speaks volumes, because if there's people who can love them, then surely there's a God who loves them too.
Amen.
And so our church has just been energized and blessed by prison ministry. And we have an RJM Sunday once a year where prisoners come over from the Carol Vance prison and they sing. They lead the morning prayer. They lead the creed for the day. They talk to the teenagers. We have a luncheon for them afterwards. And the whole entire day is around prison ministry. We have a Joshua tree in our entry hall, which is like an angel tree where people pick off tags. And those tags may have a big print Bible or alpha materials or summer camp for a prisoner's child or whatever. And we have our whole church can participate that way by giving of their wealth that they have to the men who need it in prison. And it allows those of us in prison ministry to have the funds to do what we do. There's a prison close to Houston right now that has 150 men who want to take Christian programming and other programs, and they're sitting on the floor. So we're buying chairs for them because of the Joshua tree. We have funds to do that. And we just participate in many, many, many different ways, and it's so much fun to work with all of these other folks who are involved in prison ministry and love the guys so much. And we're not just involved in Carol Vance, but in Jester, the Jester prisons, Jester 3, Jester 4. We're involved in the Darrington unit. We're going to start an alpha program there very soon, we hope. And we're involved in the Hobby unit, which is a women's prison unit where we do women's Kairos, and that's up near Waco. You name it, we're involved in it, and it's blessed our church just 1,000 times over.
Is there any government funding available for these programs?
We don't really want government funding.
Oh, no, that's right. I can understand
We
that.
do not want government funding because they'll tell us how we have to spend it.
Yes.
All of that Christian programming I was talking about, the Carol Vance Prison, all of that is through private fundraising from Prison Fellowship. The state pays for the uniforms, pays for the food, and pays for the guards. And then the programming, the men come there voluntarily. They volunteer to come to this prison. They have to apply to come to this prison. And we have Muslims, we have Buddhists, we have all different faiths, but the programming is still Christian, and they still must be involved in the program if they volunteer to come there. So the funding is Christian. So there is no government funding. But the government receives the benefit from this, and we all receive the benefit from it because, like, I'm using Carol Vance as my example, there are Christian-based dorms in at least 65 units in the state of Texas. We're doing pretty good in Texas,
Right.
way better than most states. But what happens is the recidivism rate at the Carol Vance prison is 6 to 8%, as opposed to 60 to 80 at a regular prison.
Wow.
It works.
It works.
They come out and they're neighbors you want next door to you, not neighbors you don't want next door to you.
Wow.
So the government should be giving us lots of money to spread this. But actually, our legislature did mandate that we have faith-based dorms in the prisons across Texas.
Right.
And so, and also they've also mandated through the legislature again that there be a day with dad at the prisons, which is a day when the children can come into the prisons, and this is under the purview of the chaplains. And so they will have a day with dad in all the prisons, we hope, in the state of Texas. And it's a glorious day when the kids can come in, their caregivers can go and be nurtured by psychologists and people that help them, but the kids just have a day with their dad. And they have jumping booths, and they have dunking booths, and they have clowns and face painting and just wonderful activities for the kids. So
Wow, that's fabulous.
in the state of Texas, we're pretty lucky because our legislature gets it a little bit.
Right. Well, that's good. I have a client that I was just appointed to do the appeal, and she'll be at the hobby unit, so I'm glad to know
okay.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's being transferred now, I believe. I'll have to follow up. George Parnham did her trial, and it was the lady that was convicted of killing her child, burying her alive, Nargis Medarasi.
Okay.
But she's on her way there, so I'll
Good.
tell her, I'll write her and tell her to
Well,
look for that.
unfortunately, the warden is not going to, I think it's the warden, they're not going to have a Kairos this year.
Oh, wow.
But hopefully they will next year.
Okay.
And hopefully the churches in that area will get more involved and start more programs. I wish it wasn't so far away.
I know,
It's
that is
just a
far.
long
Waco's
way.
a long way away. Let's take one phone call. Caller, thank you for calling Truth and Justice for Vivian King.
Well, thank you, Vivian. I appreciate you having me on. This is Ray Hill.
Hey, Ray.
Hey, Ray Hill, famous Ray
Yeah.
Hill. How you
Good to
doing?
see you, brother. And those Wesleyans over in Sugar Land are famous because they have a program that I just was bragging about today, where they get in touch with inmates through several Methodist churches, but I think the Wesleyans in Sugar Land kind of go the lead road, and prepare them to be connected with congregations where they are going.
Right.
And that has had a substantial reduction on recidivism rate. It's not so much the Christian dorm down at on the Jester unit that works as it is that bridge. And by the way, I know Carol Vance personally, and he was the DA, sent me to prison.
Yeah, you've told your story. Yep, I know he actually sent you to prison. He was the
sent me to
DA.
prison, and we're friends now. And we talk a lot about the program down there because I have a lot of respect for a program that works. And I would encourage other congregations to just don't look at prisoners as people who are locked in cages, but look at them as people who are going to emerge the other side of those lockups. And that's when they really need Christian love and support, is in the process of coming out. And that is the most effective way to cut recidivism, is to nurture them
I agree.
through the process
That is correct.
until they get their feet on the ground and get stable again. But I want to thank you for doing the show. I want to thank your guests for their wonderful work any light we can shine in that dark tunnel of prisons will bring understanding to a broader audience. And thank you for your work.
Thank you so much, Ray,
Thank
for
you, Ray.
your
All you
work,
do.
Thank
for
you.
all you do, and for your leadership. God bless you. We love you. Okay. All righty. Danny,
Yeah.
you haven't talked today. Let's
Well,
what's on your mind?
Well, I'm just, happy to be in the room. I attended 12 years of school and gained a lot of knowledge. But when I spent 15 years in prison, I gained a lot of wisdom. And three of the things that I've learned that returned me back to prison, I identified three characteristics of, and it was when I became frustrated, when I got in a conflict, or I felt pressure. And these are the things that when I talk to my brothers when they get out, that I ask them to focus on. That don't become frustrated, avoid conflict, and avoid pressure. Because under these circumstances, if I'm not aware of them, I may go medicate under one of those three things. And those are things that take me back. But the things that keep me out is commitment, discipline, and focus. So, there's three things that can put me back in. There's three things that'll keep me out. And I said, that's not a huge list, but that's a list I need to look at on a daily basis. And this is something that can be taught. And one of the things what reason they say that the faith-based communities work in the prisons is that we're able to help each other. So when a person brings a message in to us, what's powerful about the message is we begin to share it with each other and believe it and confirm it and validate it with each other. Like they brought it in because we always see us different from people that's never been to prison.
Right.
That's our perception. We're not like you. We'll never be like you. We're ostracized from society. And but when somebody comes in and tell you they love you, and then there's no motive, it's hard to invalidate that.
It's hard to ignore it. Or
Yes,
just say that
you try to.
They're trying to be like us because they're not trying to say I understand your story. They're just trying to
Love you.
And everybody wants love.
And you know,
It's making me want to get in that jail. So I give me some love.
Yeah.
I need me some love.
Right.
I know where you can get it.
love.
I'm
kinda-
divorced and lonely. I need some love.
Yeah. Love just chases away fear. Love encompasses so many different things, and there's so many things written about what love can do. But love expressed and shown, man, it's kind of like, whoa, I read about this in books and seen it on TV, but here it is in my face. And when you locked up, you got this knob where emotions, where you turn it all the way off. I don't want to feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I feel, I don't have nothing to medicate it with.
Right.
Think about it.
Oh yeah.
If I start feeling it and they don't allow me to medicate it, so I figure out I better just turn the button off.
Right.
And that's what happens when it happened to me. That was my experience.
That's the way you survived.
I survived by turning the feeling bob off. But somebody made me realize you're not going to be able to survive like that.
You think maybe that's one of the reasons why we have so much recidivism, survival mode? It's off, feelings are off, but once you get out, you're going to feel again because you're going to connect with family members,
Go
friends.
overwhelmed.
You're going to be overwhelmed with feelings, but then you're going to be disappointed too immediately.
Expectations not going to be met.
Right. You expect people to do this for you because they say they love you and hug you. You want them to buy you a new car, do this, do that, and
Right.
you don't really understand their
Validate
struggle.
me.
Yeah. Help me. If you love me, they think love means help. And I think then there's feelings hurt, and then here comes the self-medication. I'm ready to get a job, and I applied for 2 weeks, and I can't find one, so now I'm disappointed.
I'm frustrated.
Oh, that's okay. You're frustrated.
I feel pressure.
Right.
And that's one of the things big is like we say, stay out of relationships when you first get out. Well, Daniel, why should I stay out of a relationship? Because, man, relationships is pressure and it's frustration. And I just told you the three things that send us back: frustration, conflict, and pressure. You're going to find that in a relationship right off the top. You're not going to be prepared for that. Give yourself some time to avoid as much frustration, conflict, and pressure as you can in your life. Because it's been my experience that those are things that have caused me to lose hope. And I medicate those feelings. And the medication I choose is not prescribed by a doctor, and you don't get it from CVSC. You know what I'm saying? And once you put those chemicals in your body, you disconnect from what reality is, and you go back to old behaviors. And it's really not that's why it's so easy to fix somebody, because there's not a lot broken there. It's just, hey, look, the brain has a pattern of way it responds and reacts to things. If you identify them, you write them down, you look at them, you may have to program your life through writing down how you think. And you may have to open up the book and look at it. Oh, I don't handle that well. Okay, I got that. And you go on about your day. That has worked for me, but it's teachable. And in this ministry, when guys come out, because he's created a platform that allows me to come in and to work with returning citizens.
Let me stop you for a moment. We have another caller. Caller, thank you for calling Truth and Justice with Vivian King.
Hi, Vivian. This is Joseph Tiarina.
Hey, Joseph.
Hi. Just have a quick question. Are the ministries happening in private prisons as well as state prisons? And I'll listen to your answer over there.
I don't know the answer. We have great guests that are being informative, but I would think yes. I mean, so what do you, do they?
Yes, they do happen in private prisons. It's sort of it's determined by how active a church chooses to be in an area. But yes, it does happen. I know that some of the prisons around the Beaumont area are private prisons, and the churches I know in the Port Arthur area do go into those prisons, and they experience Kairos there as well. So yes, they do.
Yeah, and at the private and state prisons, there are prison chaplains, which are oftentimes hired by the state to provide religious programs to the incarcerated individuals at the particular unit. And those programs are often volunteer driven, and so the chaplains welcome different church communities as well as religious communities broadly to get involved, because in the prisons we have churches, we have persons from the Islamic community and multiple faiths, and so it's happening. I'm doing some work at the Harris County Jail with the reentry program. We're developing a male mentorship program, and I'm collaborating with another gentleman who is a Muslim, and he's focusing on developing programs for the Muslim individuals, and I'm focusing on developing a curriculum for the Christian inmates. And so right here at Harris County, which is a public facility sponsored by the county, there are opportunities available for churches to get involved.
Right. The only problem with Harris County that I see is because most people are housed there, 60% are housed there waiting on their court date or their trial. They're so temporary and transient. I know, like, if you're on the court side, for example, say I represent someone and, the cases maybe be settled or we go to trial or they take their time in the next 2 or 3 months or they're waiting for trial, they can't get into the programs because the programs require a certain amount of time to be in them, and they're in a holding pattern, but they're not at their final resting place like they are when they actually go to prison. They know that they're going to be there a certain amount of time, so they know that they can really benefit. That's a good way of biding their time. I'm not saying it's not important. Don't get me wrong, because there are people who are actually, if you're punished for a misdemeanor, the punishment is the Harris County Jail. So you can be there up to a year because of your punishment. So I don't know if, when you're working on that, talk to me about that to see if you can have the short-term programs worth long programs, because it might be for those after they've gotten their time.
Right.
For the county time, though, which will be a misdemeanor time. Because if they've gotten their conviction, say, for example, they've been there, start a program 2 weeks ago, in it 2 weeks, they go to court, they might take 5 years TDC, and then they'll be pulled on a chain. So would that be beneficial for them, or do you want people that is this going to be like a one-time talk, or is it going to be a program that lasts several weeks? But when you get onto that,
Yeah, I mean,
I'll help you with that.
and one of our members at St. John's downtown, Jennifer Herring, is the reentry coordinator, and she's developed a fantastic program for many of the women that are caught up in human sex trafficking, and it's been effective in terms of helping them escape that cycle of human sex trafficking and a
Right, 'cause
number
the
of
sheriff-
other issues.
And the sheriff's department has Kathy Griffin
Yeah.
that's in charge of that in the jail, and she's been on the program to tell her sex story and how she works on that program. But what the courts are doing with her, she coordinates with the court. So they call her, like if you have a prostitute that's now a felon, because their third prostitution is a felony. So once they call her in to see if she can put them in her program, where if she takes them through the evaluation process, they can get probation and then stay on an extended program even after they get out. But they have to have certain criteria to stay in, to see if they'll fit in her program for the time that they can invest, and if they're willing to change. They're ready to get off drugs and deal with their, whatever problems that they're having.
Right. So yeah, we're looking at a similar
Something similar,
thing
okay.
in terms of developing a criteria for persons that will be accepted into the program, but also within the state jails.
Yeah, I was going to tell you to
Keegan's.
keep that in mind.
Yeah,
because Joe
Keegan's.
Keegan's is
Yeah,
here. Yeah, that's
yeah.
in Tascasita.
Yeah, and I've done
So,
some work there
Yeah,
as well
keep
as
that in mind, because that's a
Lynchburg.
big one. That's a
Yeah,
big
so
one.
they're
there.
usually there from 1 to 2 years. A lot of the offenders,
Right.
and there's opportunity
Right, great opportunity
to
there.
engage
Yeah.
them with effective
The
ministry
the
programs.
maximum amount of time for state jail is 2 years. So people are getting from 6 months to the minimum punishment is 6 months. The maximum is 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's enough time to do some programming, and they're usually nonviolent offenders.
Right.
People that really can be rehabilitated. Well, everybody can be rehabilitated.
Yeah.
But those who are usually younger and at the age where they really could deal with some Christian, godly men life skills, because most of them have short fuses. They were raised by uneducated women who don't work themselves, not even their husband, no men around. And so they really need a lot of life skills, but they're young enough to be developed.
And there's a lot of good 3-month programs.
Okay.
A lot of programming. We run our programs in 3-month increments. Most of them do. So the volunteers have a month off to sort of rest and recoup, and then come back charged up again, ready to go.
That's a lot of work. Let's take
Yeah.
another call. Caller, thank you for calling Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Please state your comment.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My comment is, as far as with brothers coming out of jail, I think they should be able to go into the workforce. If they in the prison and they're doing all these different jobs at pennies on a dollar, they have built up these skill sets to be able to come out into society and do some of the same things that the government is taking advantage of and paying them little or nothing. They should be able to still come out and get some jobs, doing some of the same things that they did when they was locked up, doing it for free. And
I
that's
agree.
pretty much it. And I think if they provided jobs, that will stop the rotating door. If they had decent jobs for some of these guys, they wouldn't. I don't think they would do half of the crimes. But when they get out, they look at their paper, they get a felony, they got a felony, they can't get a job. So what they supposed to do? It's a revolving door, because they always talk about their felonies and stuff like that. So they can't get a job, and it's like, okay, well, what am I gonna do? I gotta pay. I gotta pay this. I gotta pay that, and then the pressure just goes up. Your family can't do it for you, and that's what makes them go out and do some of the things that got them in there in the first place. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for calling, sweetheart. You call every week with good, down-to-earth, everyday, practical talk, real talk. I mean, that's real talk, what you're saying, and I appreciate that. When I was in this American Leadership Forum, that's what I was trying to debate. Y'all use your influence, but the counter-argument I was getting from my conservative brethren, who I love and respect, is why should we help them go get a job when so many people need jobs who've never been in trouble before? So why would we help them? And my point is this. First of all, we're all in the criminal justice system, whether you're a judge, whether you're a prosecutor, wherever you work. But young people, 18, gets a state jail felon, say he stays a year. He comes out, he's a felon, he's 19. When I was 19, I had more energy than I'd ever have in my life. I could go to college, I could party, I could work. I mean, you cannot sit a 19-year-old down and idle mind as a devil's workshop. I mean, if they're going to be 19 looking at TVs, new cars, apartments, houses, what commercials, you're just sitting around looking at TV and everything, everybody's selling everything. So while we're at work, punishing them and not trying to help them work, they're sitting up, well, I would like a new car. They don't understand how to get it. They might come rob me today saying, well, let me just go out and hit a lick and rob somebody thinking because I have a BMW that I have a bunch of money, not realizing that I might be upside down in the BMW. I might owe more than I can pay.
Right.
My clients haven't paid me in 3 months. I might be living off my savings. I don't even have an ATM card, but you might assume I have one because you see credit cards in my purse. You know, I mean, so the thing is, because they don't even understand budgeting. They've never even had that experience, so they assume that people have things. When you see a lot of robberies, people get killed and knocked over the head, and people don't even have any money, or they might have $50 because they don't understand. And so I think that we should be having some type of work programs to help people learn the value of a dollar, learn budgeting, realize most people are not rich, most people are not wealthy, most people are working their butts off for whatever they have. And I do understand there's a conflict between the young people who've done everything they were supposed to do, getting a job, and those who haven't. But at some point in society, if we want to work and live together harmoniously, we've got to make some exceptions.
Well, there's a program at the Carol Vance Prison called the Business Competition Program, and the guys that are incarcerated there are encouraged to come up with a business plan, and it's a business plan where they can be self-employed because it is so hard to get a job and find someone who'll take a chance on you and hire you. So if they start their own lawn service or their own jumping booth kind of kid toys or whatever, but they come up with this business plan, and then the prison invites in bankers and lawyers and all sorts of business people. Some come from New York City, and they judge the business plans. And some of them, they'll tell them, this one is good for this reason, this one you need to do this one isn't going to work. And they actually help the guys, and some of the guys have actually gotten funding for their programs from this business competition from the banks that have come in, and they have promised them funding for when they get out. And the stipulation is that when they get out, they need to try to hire other ex-offenders in their business plan to help them out. And a lot of them are doing this. A lot of them have started their own programs. Some are making in the millions. Some have probably lost in the millions, but they have, and everything in between.
Yeah, that's business.
That's right.
Can I
That's
briefly
right.
share a story? Me and Dr. Chism recently decided one of the things when we were at this conference that the inmates put on the board said, do something. What they were trying to empower and encourage us to do, that once we left that 3-day conference and spending time with them, that we came back, we would actually put some of our ideas that they gave us and that we went into action. So what we agreed that we was going to go out and talk to employers about hiring people that's out of prison through our ministry, that we would put them through a cycle of things that they need to do within 30 days or maybe 90 days. And once we send them to you, you will hire them. So I met with this manager. He said, Danny, that's a great idea. He said, but the problem I'm having with my company is we can't even promote the people that we have, because when it's time to promote them, they looked at everybody record, and everybody we had criminal background, and they didn't want to promote them.
Dang.
And this was at a car wash.
A car wash?
Right. So, like they want to move into service advisors from just, but he said it's
Just
the
because of their background, they can't go by their job performance and their trustworthiness.
I'm just
saying.
Thing about it is,
I think like it's like the churches. We've taken this thing way too far. It's gone too far.
But his employees, he couldn't promote them when he put them in for promotion.
I understand. But don't you think that this is the problem I have working in the prosecution and defense for 22 years? I see people come and go and get records, but people hire who they want to hire.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, people hire who they want to hire. I have clients that are VPs at big corporations because they knew somebody. I have people who are teachers who have records because they knew somebody. People that work on the waterfront, all of these labor jobs, good labor jobs, hazmat, hazardous waste. I mean, all kind of jobs because they knew somebody. What I'm saying is people can change the rules. I mean, we created the rules. We can change the rules. Another thing what makes me mad about Texas is I have a girlfriend that's a lawyer. She told me back in Michigan, she or somebody had a record, and after 5 years, they can expunge a real record. In Texas, you can't do that. You know, that's kind of, you know, the legislature can change some of this stuff because, you know, like 20 years ago, you could even go online and get computer information.
That's where we
on
need to
people.
go to.
And we need to change the law on, you know, time limits, what people can see, what is really public record, because your government is supposed to do a public service. If it's doing more harm than good, then we need to take back the government in that regard, because you can't just have all this whole 2 and 3 generations sitting at home watching TV, wanting what we want, and sitting around getting high, and then going doing something stupid that they might have really wanted to work.
Right.
And been working, and so they can be tired on Friday night like everybody else and drinking a beer with their girlfriends, you know? And that's what frustrates me. Let's take a quick call, please. Caller, thank you for calling Truth and Justice with Vivian King.
Oh, right on, Mr. King. I have a bad line, so I'll just make my point.
Not really. It's coming across pretty good.
Oh, it hadn't really started. I hope that employers consider hiring these people that maybe got felonies on victimless crimes, that they were, if it was drug involved, that these kids were offered a chance to give state evidence to the supplier, so they didn't take that deal and they went to jail. So they shouldn't be punished for that part, at least.
Right.
And that's my one point. Thank you.
Thank you for calling, and thank you for your support every week. Yeah, it's just something has to be done, but the big and powerful have to get involved, really. I mean, us grassroots is good. It's important. We make a difference. But it's a societal problem. It's a big problem.
Well, it's my understanding that right now in the city of Houston, in the council, in our city council, that there's a proposal to take that box that you have to check that says offender off of all applications. Now, I'm not sure what the city can do as far as...
And the city hires ex-cons.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
but
the city of Houston.
it's certainly...
I mean, they always start in solid waste, which is
but
trash.
maybe
That's fine. At least they start.
Maybe it's a good first step.
I think
if the
that is a
city
good
would do
first
that,
step.
maybe it would go to the state, and I think that'd be wonderful. The last caller, he said nonviolent or victimless offenses. I know an awful lot of men who committed terrible crimes who have changed, completely changed. They are not the same person. It needs to be across the board for all of these people.
I'm with you too.
They are
I'm
wonderful,
with you
godly
too.
men, and they need to have the same chance that others do.
Cain and Abel killed. I mean, you know, it's killing. You can't stop and predict, but like you said with your program, Miss Betty, you can love.
That's right.
And sometimes the people who kill and do dastardly things are feeling unloved. The best husband that's never been in trouble can snap and kill somebody at 50. So you never can predict, you know, murderous or criminal behavior like that. But we can love and we can try.
Right.
To try to rehabilitate people. I mean, there's gonna be some casualties. But there's casualties at war in everything we do.
That's right.
Living, going to war, being in prison. I mean, whatever we do, it's a casualty. But I love the message of love that you're doing. I mean, I am just bowing down to this program that you are doing. It is what we should be all about as a church. I'm bowing down to you, Pastor Chism, Dr. Chism, for saying, you know, what can the church do about mass incarceration? I want you to spread that message when you meet with other pastors. Keep spreading that message, because we have a lot of big pastors here that I never hear talk about that. Right. And just always throw that into y'all's meetings, into your prayers, and, you know, maybe they can, you know, stop building malls and subdivisions. And
Well, you know, and I hear them say, well, the congregation, the church won't like this. They won't like it. That's not been my experience. The church has embraced it and has come to love the men as much as I do. And I just don't believe that.
Yeah.
I just don't believe that.
Another level of it, too, is the prophetic dimension. Churches, historically, have two roles. One is, and pastors especially, have a priestly role and a prophetic role. Priestly role is what churches do, ministering the gospel, worship, serving communion, attending to the pastoral duties of members of the congregation. And most churches are absorbed, and most pastors are absorbed in fulfilling those priestly duties and responsibilities. And even this is something that I kind of deal with doing prison ministry. Oftentimes, it's much more of a priestly nature in terms of ministering to the needs of the men and women in prison as well as those coming out and sharing the love. And that's important. That's what churches are called to do. But also in the Bible, there's the prophetic, which is speaking truth to power, exposing evil where it lurks. And we have to acknowledge the evil that exists within our criminal justice system, the hypocrisy. Some legislators are Christian, and they write these laws that are unjust. And so I feel that part of the church's task is to expose that and to speak against it. And the reality is, and looking at the civil rights movement and that history, when we start to really expose it and speak against it, look for the money trail, the corporations that are profiting from the criminal justice system, there's a threat of backlash.
Right.
There's some discomfort that can come with engaging in the prophetic role. That's why Jesus was crucified. It wasn't that he was only a priest and a healer, but he disrupted the status quo. And so that's one of my challenges with prison ministry, is to engage in both the priestly. We have to serve and love these men where they're at. As a pastor, I'm called to try to help this brother that need a job find a job, provide housing, direct people to resources. But as a prophet, the goal is to speak truth to these evil powers that perpetuate the system of injustice and the structural issues that exist. And the unfortunate reality is that a lot of our churches, we have fallen short on the prophetic when it comes to the criminal justice system. Mass incarceration has blossomed over the past 50 years.
And where have the ministers been? They've been silent.
Right. And why has that been?
Right, because it's like you said, they weren't able to challenge, like MLK, and they were willing to die. They were willing to get beat up, hosed, dogged, shot. Because they were going to expose what they felt was evil or how people felt. Now it's not a race thing, really. It's more of a systemic problem
Right.
now.
It's a class thing
it's
as well.
It's almost like a class thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not racial anymore. It's more society. Black, white. Everybody will put their nose down to the these people, those people. So it's a society problem, but the ministers are not being prophetic, like you said. They're not exposing the injustice. You have to get involved to expose it. You have to understand it. You have to try to learn to maneuver in it, love in it. And like I said when we started the show, is the system that we are in, the criminal justice system, was not designed for mass incarceration. That's why it doesn't work.
We've just built prison after built them.
Right,
built
but we've never come up with, we need a new solution for crime. Because we're taking a 50-year-old model when you had very little crime, just heinous crimes. That's all you incarcerated, really, because you let people beat their kids, whoop their wives. You let people handle their business. People weren't all in your business like the government is now. But now it's like you're trying to take this old model of incarceration for a new society of problems, and we need a new solution. What you guys are doing are the new solution, but it should be a governmental solution to the problem. As you know, half the people in prison have mental issues. They should be in mental wards. They should be housed where they can be treated for their mental problems, learn to be loved, and to function in society with their mental deficits. They can still work. It might not be the same work, but they cannot fit into normal society the same way everybody else can, because they become the boy who who has to do things for attention because he feels mentally he's not feeling adequate. So he'll be the one
Right.
that'll go shoot because he'll be the the one that you can make do anything because he knows.
Gangs prey on them.
Yeah, okay, yeah, people prey on them, and we need a different challenge for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Let me give some facts for our audience.
Certainly.
The United States has 5% of the total world The United States has 5% of the total world population. We make up 5% of the total population, but we house more than 25%
of our own.
of our own. No country on earth incarcerates more of its citizens than the United States. There are nearly 2.5 million adults in U.S. prison. Sadly, upon release, 50% of them reoffend and return to prison within 3 years. And that's the reality of it. And what we're doing is trying to lower that recidivism rate of 50% within the 3 years. And when they sent 4 of us on delegates from Texas to Chillicothe, Ohio, 2 weeks ago. It was myself, Dr. Chism, Betty, and Renee Till. Shout out to Renee Till if you're out there listening. And what we did is we went inside of prison for 3 days and spent 8 hours a day in a prison in Ohio. And what we learned there is that that the people there have built a program that took prisoners, that transformed prisoners to change the community or how they lived inside the prison. And the hopes was long term that that these people, once they return to society, that their transformation would come out with them. And that's one of the segues we were trying to establish. That our relationship came from the United Methodist Church sending 4 of us to Ohio for 4 days.
Wow.
And that experience brought us here today.
Well, we have 2 minutes, and so I'm going to ask Miss Betty and Dr. Chism to take a minute to wrap up. And I'm going to also ask that in about a month, if y'all can, we come back and continue the conversation.
Oh, I'd love to.
And then I can, because I didn't even get to advertise tonight. I was running late in court late. I ran in here late.
Right.
And so usually, I mean, thank God I have loyal watchers because I didn't get to put it on. I sent out about 600 constant contacts, and I sent out, put it on Facebook. I didn't do any of that today. So they'll at least know what the topic is.
Yeah.
But I didn't do any of that today. So
I'd love
but
to
luckily
come back.
people watch, and then you can send, because people can watch it. I have friends that watch it all over the country online.
Wonderful.
So, you can advertise it too. All right, take your time, Mr. Betty.
Well, I'd be happy to come back because in the Methodist Church, of which we're all members, we have a district level and we have a conference level. And the Methodist Church on the district level and the conference level, they have adopted this year for the mission excellence or the missional excellence and focus will be restorative justice. So when we come back, the 4 of us will have been to several meetings with our conference leaders, and we will have more of a plan that we can tell you about to tell you exactly what the Methodist Church has planned. And hopefully if the Methodist Church will start moving in the direction that John Wesley told us to go into the prisons, that other churches will come along with us.
I've been a Methodist all my life, and I never knew that John Wesley said that. I know of John.
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't know he said go into the prisons.
He said go into prisons and hospitals and get out of the church.
Didn't know
That's what he was about.
Right, and
How
he
do
was
you-
also an abolitionist.
Yes, he was.
And speaking on that, when we look at slavery, who played a major role in ending that brutal system, it was a lot of the ex-slaves, those that were oppressed during the civil rights movement. It was multiple groups, but those that experienced that oppression. So likewise with this particular issue, it's a call. We need ex-offenders, men and women that have felt the sting of this system of injustice, to get involved. Use your experience, your knowledge to make a difference. And so that's what I love about Brother Danny. He's an ex-offender and he's involved. He's a soldier. And so it's a shout out to other brothers, sisters, men and women, get involved and help us make a difference.
Well, I'm getting the wrap-up signal, so thank you again for participating in your community, for learning more about your criminal justice system from a Christian standpoint. And Ask your ministers out there, what is the church going to do about mass incarceration? Thank you for watching, and I'll be here next Wednesday night with Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. We've been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate